Greetings peeps from snowy Sweden. This morning I woke up with an unquenchable desire to record a tutorial about VRTK in Unity 3D, that's Virtual Reality Toolkit, and especially how to hook it up with Playmaker. So let's get going. So here we are. In Unity I've already set up a scene with Playmaker and Steam VR. So I have a simple setup here with a plane, and I've dragged in the camera rig prefab. I've also disabled the main camera. So that's where we are. Let's go to the asset store and find our marvelous VRTK. And already we are in awe. This is free. So no cheeseburgers need to be sacrificed for this bad boy. So just import. Marvelous. So let's get this thing set up. So what we're gonna do is add a game object, create empty. Let's reset its transforms. And we'll rename it VRTK. And let's add a component, VRTK SDK manager. And in this SDK selection, let's choose Steam VR on all these drop downs. So as you see, this works with Oculus Rift as well. Haven't tried it myself, but useful. Then we have this button here, auto populate linked object. So let's press that. And as you see, it just chooses everything from the camera rig prefab here. Then we have a couple of things left. Script alias left controller. So let's create that. So right click on the VRTK and create empty. Let's call this left controller. And right click again, create empty, and we'll call this, what shall we call this? Right controller. There we go. So if we choose both of them now, and then we're gonna add a component, and this time we're search for VRTK controller events. There we go. So here we can then choose which button does what. But now we're kind of set up to be able to grab information from our controllers. So let's create a new empty game object. We'll call this controller manager. All right, and then we go to the Playmaker window here, right click, add an FSM. We'll call this first state listener. And now, again, we're just using the marvelous capacities of Playmaker. Let's make sure that that lock button is pressed so that when we go to other game objects, we don't lose this one here. So let's grab the VRTK controller events component and drag it into the state tab here. Get property, and now the property we are interested now, for example, is trigger clicked. As you see, there's lots and lots of info that we can get, but let's do the trigger clicked. And then let's make a new variable. Let's call this trigger left clicked. So it will create a bool for us. And then let's make sure that every frame is ticked. Let's do the same for the right controller. Just grab that and drag it into the state window, get property, and then we choose again trigger clicked. And this time we store that bool as trigger right clicked. Okay, so now I have this debug box here ticked. So as you can see, we get this nice view here on the current state of the bool that we're dealing with. So now, let's just see, Steam VR is kicking. Awesome. I'll power on my controllers. And let's see if we can get this working. Oh, every frame. Forgot to tick that. So let's drag the game view and put it there to the side. At least in my case, if I just have the scene view open, then somehow Steam VR kind of stops. It pauses. So if you have both of them open, then you can see everything happening in real time in the scene view. So let's see, here we have our controller. So let's grab the left controller and let's press F on the keyboard while our cursor is in the scene view window, so we can see them nicely there. And then what you can do is you can look at the state window here, see if we get the information, and then you can also see in real time the triggers moving in the scene window here. So for some reason things aren't working right now, so let's see what's wrong. We forgot to assign the script aliases. Let's drag those in. There we go. And then let's just see if we have some better luck this time. Okay, here we have our controllers. And if you look at the left controller in the Playmaker state tab, it goes from false to true. And then the right controller works as well. Great. So what can we do with this info now? So we could, for example, grab a bool test and choose the, for example, trigger left clicked. If it's true, we could go for an event called triggered. And then we could add a new state. And we call it triggered. And then choose every frame. And now we can test that. So then we can flow into that state. But if we want something that happens, for example, send an event to another FSM or something like that, and if we then add that finished transition back to the listener, so then we might encounter some problems. So if you now trigger that, everything pauses. Why is that? Because loop count exceeded. So you were pressing the trigger, it went to the other state, and then it immediately flowed back because of the finished transition. And then because your trigger was still pressed, it just carried on looping. And then the loop count just went haywire. So if this is your setup, then we could use something called bool changed. And I use that a lot these days, actually. So let's try the trigger left clicked, and then changed event would be the, let's make it go, for example. And then we add another state, and we make that bool test. And then here we put the bool test. And then if it is true, we go to the triggered event, and then we add another state. And then we put the finished thing here, and then we can flow back. So what will happen is, now we have the left controller, it's false. So as soon as it changes, then it will flow here. And then in here, it will then test whether the change was into true or false. So, and then we're good. So now we float back here. So let's complete this by, if it is false, we'll go to false. I guess I should be working a little bit on my naming conventions here, but yes, you get the idea. So this way we avoid that big loop. So the listener only goes forward if the bool changes. And that's a good system to deal with it. Okay, so VRTK, it has all kinds of awesome things. This is just barely scratching the surface. But the method I applied now for linking it into Playmaker works in most cases. What's happening at the moment is the Stone Fox, developer of VRTK, is running a Kickstarter campaign. And there's 6 days to go. And the goal is quite large, and we are at £30,000 today. So a ways to go. But seriously, if you look at all these things that he's planning on doing, the rewards are just absolutely incredible. Fully rigged hands, VR avatars, teleport beams, realistic weapons, inventory systems. Need I say more? Go and support this, and let's see if we can get this Kickstarter campaign launched. Anyways, my name is Marco Lawrence from Pengu Studios, and this was a tutorial on VRTK. Catch you later, peeps. Have a good one. Bye.